Hello again, my DIY loving friends, and welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. It's time to DIY high-end home decor on a budget. We are going to transform discarded wine corks into stunning home decor pieces using some affordable supplies from Dollar Tree. No basic trivets and coasters here, folks. Trash to treasure never looked this good. So let's go DIY together. So we have a Facebook group in my town called the Buy Nothing, where you can ask and give away things for free that people want to get rid of. Well, I asked for any wine corks that people were looking to get rid of, and boy, did my neighbors come through for me. I got bags and bags of these corks, and I knew I could put them to good use. So our main supply for these DIYs is completely free. You guys should definitely see if you have one of these Facebook groups in your town. It is a great source for crafting. Jumping right in, I am using some Folk Art white chalk paint, which I will link for you in the description box below, mixed with some plain water to thin it out. And I have these wood panels I got at Amazon, which I will link for you below, but you can also find similar panels or frames to use at Dollar Tree. That'll work for this too. I paint the panel walls inside and out with the watered down chalk paint. I separated a bunch of these Mina Mesa brand corks, I think, from the bunch. I don't know where I got these, but one of my neighbors must really like this brand, so I will have to check that out for myself. I didn't have enough of these particular corks, so I picked out a couple of similar sized ones that were similar height and width as these. And all I'm going to do here is use a little bit of hot glue to attach my corks in rows and columns that are 4x4. So we're going to use 16 corks total in the middle, like sunken part of the panel, and they're going to be standing straight up. You could have the wine stained side of the cork facing up or not facing down. That's up to you. However makes you happy, you assemble them however you like. And what is this, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. It's a very handy brush holder. I love how functional this is, and you could use this for paint brushes as you are painting to hold the brush up or to place your washed brushes to dry. You could also use this for makeup brushes as well, and in my opinion, I think it would look amazing in a bathroom or a vanity too. High style, high function, and could that be any quicker, really? For this next DIY, I'm starting with this 7-inch wood round that I got on Amazon, and I will link it for you below. But you could also find similar wood rounds to use for this at Dollar Tree. I am painting the wood with some Folk Art antique wax, which I will link for you below. And I'm also only painting the top side and the edges because the bottom side is not going to be seen in this project. I use a dry paper towel to wipe off the excess wax as I'm painting, and I put it aside to fully dry. I picked out some corks that were similar width, and I am using some hot glue to attach them on their sides around the entire diameter of the wood round. They're kind of half on and half off the edge of the circle. And when I get to the end, I'm using a knife to trim some of that last cork to make it fit in the space that was left over. Next, I pick out a bunch of corks that are the same height standing up, and I am going to hot glue them directly on top of the corks that are on their sides, as you can see me doing right here. I center them on top of each of the corks underneath, and I'm going to attach them side by side all the way around the diameter of the wood circle. Then I'm going to go all the way around the wood round again with some more corks that are laying on their sides. Afterwards, I decided I wasn't loving the way the seams between the rows of corks looked, so I grabbed some of this thick jute that I had from Amazon, which I will link for you below, but you can also use some Dollar Tree Nautical rope for this if you'd prefer. Now I use some dabs of hot glue to attach the jute between the top and the middle rows of the corks, just to cover up that gap between them and make them look a little bit more finished. And then at the end of the row of jute, I also was not very careful with my scissors, and I proceeded to cut my finger right along with the end of the rope that I was cutting, which I will not make you watch. You're welcome. But honestly, sometimes I think I shouldn't be allowed around sharp objects, and that's just a little personal tidbit to share with you. But I grabbed a Band-Aid and we just kept crafting. I also filled in the gap between the bottom and the middle rows of cork with that same jute, the same way as I did the top row. I felt that my tray could use a little height, so I grabbed 4 champagne corks that I had in the bunch that were the same height, and I spaced them out as 4 legs on the bottom of my wood round and hot glued them into place. And this is my wine cork riser tray, and I love the way this looks. Perfect, obviously, for serving wine, but also a beautiful addition to a coffee table or bookshelf for decorative items and knickknacks. So unique and super simple to make. For this next DIY, I had these 2 glass votive tea light candle holders in my stash, but Dollar Tree carries loads of similar glass candle holders that you could use for this too. I used a sharp knife, and carefully this time, I sliced some corks in half, right down the middle. I'm using hot glue to attach the halved corks around the middle of both of those candle holders. And I simply trimmed down the last cork to fit into the space that's left over on each of those candle holders, since it really isn't going to be that noticeable if it's smaller than the others. To embellish the candle holders a little, I grabbed some of this paper raffia I had in my stash. I will link it for you below, but you can also use the raffia they sell at Dollar Tree to do this too. I unravel the paper a bit. Now all I'm going to do is tie a crude little knotted bow around the middle of the corks on both of the candle holders. And that's all there is to these lovely little cork candle holders. They're fully functional and just look so much more upscale than what they actually are, which is simply Dollar Tree candle holders and free wine corks. A total winner in my book. This next DIY starts with this wood tray from Dollar Tree Plus, which I am going to paint with some folk art antique wax. And initially, I wasn't going to paint the inside bottom of the tray, but I decided to change gears a little bit. And I ended up painting everything except for underneath where you can't see. I also use a dry paper towel to rub off the excess wax as I'm painting. Once that wax dried, I start to lay out my corks in the position that I want them. So starting diagonally across the tray, I alternate the corks vertically and horizontally across that tray on an angle. And once I'm happy with the layout, I start gluing them down on that first row. And when there's a space left over at the end of the row, I just use a cut piece of cork to fit into that end space, as you can see me do right here. Then the next row I do exactly the same way, just laying the corks out in that same pattern and then gluing them down when I'm happy with where their placement is. I realized that these corks were much easier to cut on an angle with these clippers that I have that you've heard me talk about before. I will link them for you below. They are so handy and they cut through anything with ease. I continued with all the rest of the rows the exact same way, using that same pattern. And I filled in what I could without having to cut. And then at the very end, I went through and I used my clippers to cut all of those smaller pieces that I needed to fit in on the edges of all of my rows and in the corners. Using those clippers saved a lot of time in doing those end pieces to complete this tray. I wanted to add a little something more to my tray, so I used the clippers to cut a bunch of corks into discs. I wasn't sure how many I'd need, so I cut a bunch, and then I mixed some Apple Barrel English Ivy Green paint with plain water to thin it out, and I'll link the paint for you below. I painted one side of these cork discs that I cut because I wanted to make a bunch of grapes to keep with our wine theme. Now, you can make these discs purple if you wanted purple grapes, but I am more a white wine fan personally, so for me, I chose to paint my grapes green. And since every grape bunch needs a stem, I grabbed one of those champagne corks I had and I painted it with a mixture of antique wax and water to deepen the brown color of that cork a bit and put it aside to dry. I placed my grapes into a shape that resembled a grape bunch to me, and I used some hot glue to attach the discs together to keep that shape intact. Then I flipped the bunch of grapes over and I used some hot glue to secure that shape in the back of the bunch of grapes. I chose a corner of my tray to add my grape bunch to, and then hot glued those cork disc grapes down on top of the other corks in the corner of that tray so that it would look like there was a 3D bunch of grapes draped over the corner of my tray. That was the look I was going for. I pulled a pair of leaves off one of my Dollar Tree greenery picks and glued that down in the corner above the grapes, and then placed the champagne cork over that to complete the 3D grape bunch in the corner of my tray. And this is my 3D wine cork tray, and oh my gosh, you guys, I love this. It may have looked better with purple grapes, admittedly. Let me know in the comments if you're team white wine green grape or team red wine purple grape. I'm taking an informal wine grape poll, but either way, I love this unique 3D tray. I think it's really special and a gorgeous high-end addition to your decor. For this next DIY, I've got this plastic wiffle ball from Dollar Tree, and I am going to paint it with apple barrel khaki paint, which I will link for you below. I do paint the whole ball, although I am not overly concerned with full even coverage. I just want to get some beige color on there to cover the white. Then I'm going to let that ball fully dry. Next, I start hot gluing corks onto the ball, starting with the seam line going around the ball, as you can see me do right here. I randomly place the corks. Some of them have the wine stain side facing upward, and some of them with the wine stain side facing down. You can alter this to your personal taste. I glue the remaining rows of corks placed in between the two corks next to it until the whole ball is completely covered with corks. And this is my wine cork ball, beyond easy to do and just an adorable, quirky wine cork addition to anyone's home decor. And as usual, I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these wine cork high-end home decor DIYs was your favorite and why. I love hearing from all of you. And if you've enjoyed this DIY video, there's another one waiting for you. Just click the link on your screen for more Medicated Housewife DIYs. Until next time, my name is Sarah. I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.